And now we're recording. It's that easy.
Awesome.
So a health professor at A&M, we were talking and I said, you got to share this on the podcast. I'm just going to hear it right now. Of what do you teach at A&M?
So I teach a couple of topics. One that's called Introduction to the Discipline, which actually help undergraduate students to figure out how people behave the way they do behave using theories to explain it, and what type of programs they can develop. Then I teach a graduate level called Health Behavior Theories, and we look at some major health theories that actually kind of grapple with how do you get people to change their behavior, which that's always hard to do, and using those theories to kind of create programs. And then the last class I teach is role, we're aging, because that's what I'm passionate about. I look at the psychology of aging and the different aging populations, right? And the populations we really don't talk about, like aging in the prison system, LGBTQ, and as they go through their aging process, people who have intellectual challenges like Down syndrome, and how they are aging into society, and what does that mean for their caregivers, right? Because they will eventually die, who would take care of them, and end of life.
So you go through like the caregiver of that person as well, like their lifespan, the caregivers of the...
So I talk about from a much more social perspective of what does it mean if your child has Down syndrome at the age of 50 and then you are maybe 80? What would that look like? And how different services can support or hinder those type of relationship? And what does it look like for someone who have Down syndrome at the age of 60 and have no relative to take care of them? What do those social services look like? Or community, neighbors.
Yeah.
So there's different ways of looking at aging for individuals who have special needs. I think it's important because now we have a lot of kids being diagnosed with autism.
Yeah, or at least on the spectrum, like with Asperger's and all that.
And what does that mean when they get 50 and 60 years old and their parents are no longer alive to be their primary caregiver? Who's going to provide that support for them? So when I look at aging, I do talk about traditional aging, getting older, having chronic disease. But I also like to think about what I call the hidden population, or the population we have yet to consider. What does that mean for those individuals as they go through their aging process?
How long does it take to study? I mean, that's got to take a while because that's pretty in depth. Like, you've covered a lot of different things, and which I dig. Like, I like it better when I don't like studies where you can go like, well, what did that entail? Like, when they throw out a study about health and something gives you cancer, but they didn't take into account if the person ate all the fast food, if they smoked or drank, or what their exercise level was, what their lifestyle was. They don't take into account that. They just say this one item, like eating X will give you cancer, has a higher rate of giving you cancer, but they didn't take any of those other numbers into effect. And I'm just using that as an example, but like you've already pointed out, a bunch of different things that you've covered.
Yeah.
To find out the reason why. So how long does that process take?
So those types of studies, they kind of do exist in our society. There's a couple of well-known studies like the Framingham Heart Study or the Nursing Health Study. And those studies started in the 70s and 80s. And so when they do talk about the things that cause cancer among individuals, sometimes they refer to those studies because they followed these individuals for like 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
For me, when I think about the aging population, especially what I call a special population within that aging category. There's not that many studies out there as relates to those individuals, because I don't think we've gotten to the point that we are thinking about those issues with especially intellectual challenge individuals. When you look at how do people age in the prison system, there have been a couple of studies, not a lot. And those studies are not long-term. It's really relatively maybe a couple of years. But they do find out that individuals who are in the prison system, as they've gone through the aging process, the aging process is accelerated. So what you expect for a 65-year-old person in the general population as far as chronic disease and like health issues, you're going to get that with prisoners who are 50 years old.
So about 10 years?
So it's a 15-year acceleration.
15-year gap.
15-year gap. The other challenge that's happening is that you have people who are lifers, and lifers mean for life. And there's these individuals who are in the prison system are having chronic diseases, cancer diagnosis, amputation. And because they're lifers and they have illnesses that will not allow them to be able to function normally, they are creating like geriatric prisons. And so there's about 3 of those nationally.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
They're creating geriatric prisons. So do you get moved there, I guess, when you're
I think so.
age?
I think so. There's one prison in Arkansas that is a geriatric prison. And so they have the individuals who do have disabilities, wheelchair bound, Alzheimer's and dementia.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that in prison.
Yeah. So
that's a different issue altogether because my mom was, she's been an RN forever. And she used to do a lot of stuff in the emergency rooms. Her and my grandpa both went together. Like they were nurses and they went to emergency rooms and whatnot. And then later on, she started doing stuff in nursing homes. And she loved taking care of the elderly. Like she had a really good time. But that's where, as a kid, I get to see a lot of, people with dementia and Alzheimer's. Mm-hmm. And that's a crazy, it's a crazy thing for the person to go through, but it really affects what it looks like more the people outside of them because they don't have a clue.
Yeah. It really impacts the family. So in my family, I can count, oh my gosh, maybe this 2 or 3 relatives. 3 relatives that have some form of dementia. The challenge with Alzheimer's, you really can't diagnose Alzheimer's until after death, and you have to do a brain biopsy. And so even though people are diagnosed with Alzheimer's, there's really no definitive diagnosis until they die and they get the brain biopsy, but they do have dementia. For one family member who had dementia, God bless his soul, he had 8 girls. And so he literally stayed in his own home until he died from secondary stroke issues. Our aunt who also had dementia, she stayed in her home, but she had home health aid, which is totally different and but really needed. But her care was a little bit more challenging because she had multiple people coming into her home, even though there were people that was in her community. But on the days that she wasn't lucid, she wouldn't remember who they were, and then she would become combative. So those are kind of the challenges with individuals who have dementia. But the struggle is really with the family members. Accepting that individual is behaving in a way because of their disease, not because they're being difficult.
Yeah.
Right. And so I had to talk to multiple of my relatives to say, no, maybe she's being this way because of the disease, not because this is her personality. And they would say, no, that she's being that way because she just want to be, that's who she is. And so that's some of the challenges. Or another relative of mine, whose mother was diagnosed with dementia, stopped seeing her because he looked so much like his father. When he was his father age, that his mother thought that was her husband and basically would come on to him in a sexual way. And it made him very uncomfortable. It was so...
It is tough. That's a tough one to deal with.
That's a tough one to deal with. And I always wondered, why did he stop seeing his mother? Because I was clueless about that until after her death, and they was talking about it, and they would say because she became sexual to her own son because she forgot she had a son. She saw this guy as her husband.
Yeah.
And I think to some extent it made him very sad that she didn't remember that this is my child.
I'm sure. Because it's like seeing your relative go, but in a really slow... You're seeing their mind go. You're not seeing, like... You're losing them even though they're still alive.
Yeah.
And they're like... They're there. They can breathe. You can talk to them. You can see them, and they're your parent. You've got this close tie to them, but then they're not them.
Yeah.
Like it's not them in that shell anymore.
Yeah, it is. It's really sad. It's even harder when you start to see symptoms and you don't want to acknowledge them until it becomes really obvious.
That was kind of my grandpa had Parkinson's, and when he got it, I mean, he was always a guy that could do everything himself. Like, he built everything himself. He worked super hard. He was an awesome guy. He starts to shake, and even him being an RN and knowing that he has the signs, he just like, I'm going to power through it, like he does everything else. And then eventually got to where, he held it off for a long time, but like it catches up to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
it's just difficult. I feel, and number one, because I work in that aging world, I'm much more sensitive to the, I guess, struggles of losing your autonomy, or even the struggle of saying like, look, man, I didn't, I'm the one who got diagnosed, so I'm the one who is diagnosed with this disease, and I don't want to acknowledge it. So if I forget about it and pretend it doesn't exist, maybe it go away. And it's a struggle to be able to. How do you wrap your head around that, right? That can potentially be you at some point.
Does your behavior-based thing tie into that? Because I would think that human behaviors, if you can learn how to change and accept things with your behavior before that time, like if you can master some and change your behavior, like bad habits, so on and so forth. If you master that skill, then I would think that's a little easier to accept.
Yeah, so I will say that my eating, I'm much more active than 95% of my family. I'm much more conscious about what I eat than 95% of my family. And a lot of it is because I see how they struggle with their own chronic disease, right? Or trying to change their behavior. Or the struggles of not being where they want to be. So my family, in a lot of sense, does dictate what I do now, because I know at some point, not being fatalistic, but I know that within my genetic DNA, I have a high risk for diabetes, hypertension, stroke, cancer. I mean, it's almost like rapid in my family. I don't think so much about dementia. I think I don't see myself being diagnosed with dementia, but I'm one of those like I want to live to be 100 type of person on my own, doing my own thing.
Yeah.
But because of the multiple chronic diseases in my family, I literally stopped eating 90% of the way my family eats. Now, when I go to see them over the holidays or when I go to see them where they live in their states, I will indulge, but I do so knowing that I'm only here for a week, which is 1 week out of the 52 weeks we have in the year. And when I go back, I would go back to my normal eating habits. I'm not a big takeout, eat out type of person. I cook 80% of my food, 90% of my food, because of health, right? And understanding that. I'm also much aware of how stress impacts your behavior, whether you eat the wrong thing or whether you indulge too much in drinks, whether it's alcohol or soda. And so I try to figure out ways to decompress myself so that I don't turn towards like fatty foods or sweet foods or those things that can actually be a stumbling block for my health.
Is it tough? I mean, I've seen a lot of try to like help people that have asked for help with like weight loss or getting healthier, so on and so forth. And I'm by no means an expert at all. I'm just really into it, you know. And I see that the people that some of their struggles are because they have no support. They're close. Their family lives all in the same area, and they all do this. And they come from a place of like, I don't necessarily think that it's a place, and maybe you can probably answer this way better than me, but it almost seems like they don't want them to get better to have a reflection of what they could be and they could do.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that. So I have a relative that's moving with me, and when I was living by myself, I was much more strict in my eating habits, and since my relative moved in, I got a little bit lax, and and so I think is with food, there's always some emotional connection, and there's also, I don't think it's meant to be really focused on sabotaging the person who wants to make those change, but there's also those subliminal messaging of, why are you doing something that's out of our norm, right? Our family norm, our social norm. And it can be hard if the person who try to make those changes don't have an additional support. Because if you are eating healthy, trying to have baked food, and then you look across the table and everybody else is eating fried food, you can only do that for so long before you succumb to it. And I think the only way you can actually be able to make those changes to really have like honest conversations with your family, to say that this is not about you, it's really about me. And I need to eat this way, and I need you to support me in wanting to eat this way. And then if your family members say, sure, we will support you, you have to say, well, this is the type of support I need. I need for you, bless your heart, you do not have to bring me an extra slice of pie when you come home. You can keep it at the grocery store. But I know you doing that because you know I like this. But if you want to support me, wait until I ask you, or wait until I say, okay, now it's time to do it. Those type of honest conversation. I think when people do go on a diet, and they go on a diet around family, they don't talk about the importance of why they want to do it and how their family can help them change, and how changing is not an indicator of a deficiency within that family member. I have had friends and family members say, oh, you eat healthy now. Right. And technically that may be a compliment, but I think there's some underlying issues going on.
Yeah.
And that's that I eat healthy all the time, but I do indulge, but let me make the decision when I want to indulge. Don't try to kind of, you know,
force you to indulge.
Yeah. And I think when you don't have those conversations, that's when people try and then they give up. Because they get frustrated because they don't talk to their family about why it's important for them to do it. It could be that the doctors say, hey, you need to lose this weight or you're going to become a pre-diabetic. I mean, that's some heavy stuff.
That's kind of a crazy, and that's something that I don't quite understand, and because I'm not that way, so I can't fully understand it. I empathize with it, because everybody has their different vices and addictions.
Yes.
And so I know that, and I know I do. I know like this sort of thing, but I love the challenge of discipline. So if I pick something, I like the challenge is more fun than the actual partaking in the thing.
Yeah.
So that's for me, that could be my addiction, you know, is that feeling of that discipline side. I don't understand when somebody's threatened with something like life altering, you know, that affects them where they could die earlier, and they get wind of it soon, like,
and they don't change.
Why don't you change? Like I talked to, there's a friend of ours is a doctor, and I asked him one time what the most surgeries he did, and it's amputation of diabetic legs. And I'm like, and arms and stuff. And I'm like, that's crazy. He goes, yeah. And he goes, I will actually tell them, because he's on the health side. He's like, this is fully avoidable.
Yes.
You will not have to do this down the line if you just cut back on this and that. Don't eat the sugar. Don't partake in this. But I mean, people who are diabetic go out and drink like fishes. They, you know, they eat the pie. They eat the stuff, and it blows my mind, because I mean, I'm sitting there going, if you told me that I was going to be pre-diabetic and never to eat ice cream or pie again, I wouldn't eat it again. Like, I would be like, no. I don't want that disease. I don't want to be a part of that.
Yeah, you sound like my father. Oh, no. He's that way.
Oh, that's going to make him so...
My father's exactly that way. The doctor said he was diagnosed, I guess in his 50s with hypertension, and told him what he needs to stop doing. And, you know, doggone it, he just stopped doing it. And
that's tough when you're that old to do that.
And you know, I was talking to my uncle about it, and he said, your father have a strong constitution. I was like, yeah, it's more than a strong constitution. It's something else. It's definitely not in my genetic code. But I think when, and this is conversations I had a lot of time with people. And I think to some extent, and I used to think that way too. I think to some extent we have to kind of understand why they are not changing. So it can be a lot of reasons that is not seen to the naked eye, right? And so when you look at emotional stress, are they in a bad relationship with someone that is constantly putting them down, make them think that they're useless, that they actually believe it, and so they don't take care of themselves because they're listening to the lie. And if a person is like that, and if a doctor is like saying, hey, if you don't change your lifestyle, then you may get diagnosed diabetes and complications. They're already hopeless. And if they're hopeless, it's not going to really make any change. There's a lot of undiagnosed alcoholism that may be related to undiagnosed mental health issues. So a lot of people probably you may think are alcoholics, but they may be self-medicating because they would rather be known as an alcoholic than someone who may be bipolar or manic. And so I think those are the things that we need to kind of consider when we talk to people, is trying to figure out why are you doing what you're doing? I had a conversation with a friend. Definitely know that the person definitely know that they needed to change their behavior, and it took everything for me not to nag and say, you need to be eating, you need to exercise, you need to lose weight, you need to do this.
It's overload though.
And so it was overload. So it took me like everything to keep my mouth shut. I have learned to keep my mouth shut for a lot of different things. And then out of the blue, regular conversation, and part of the conversation would say, when I'm stressed, then I drink soda all the time. I was like, okay, now I understand. So, when the person wasn't stressed, they wasn't drinking cans and cans of soda.
They're not drawn to that.
No. And so the next time I saw the person was months later, and I saw that person was drinking soda again. I was like, okay, so what's stressing you out? Right? Now we can have a true conversation, and I was able to share what was going on in that person's life. But if I nag, I would never have known that the drinking soda was an outside kind of indicator of what was going inside. And I think for a lot of people in healthcare, and sometimes I have to check myself too, is that I need to, instead of saying you need to do X, Y, and Z, I need to find out why are you doing X, Y, and Z when you actually know what the outcome is going to be. If you can help the person identify why they're doing it, then you can really help them make those changes. And those changes doesn't have to be big; they just have to be consistent.
I think that's like the most important thing right there. The changes don't have to be big; they're just consistent. Like,
yeah.
Everybody who wants to jump off and start changing themselves in a better way, no matter what it is. Even myself, if I take too big of a chunk, I'm not going to complete it.
Yeah.
Because I've skipped steps 1, 2, 3 and gone straight to 5.
Yeah.
And you can't, it's just like anything that you do. There's a reason those steps are there. So you learn it and you know it and then fully understand it. But if you skip it, you're gone. So the little changes and build on that like a snowball rolling downhill and just building, getting bigger and bigger and bigger in a good way.
Yeah. I mean, I go to CrossFit, as you know, and I am not ashamed of either using the PCV pipe, which have no weight, or the smallest weight, which is 25 pounds with no bars on it, because I'm not trying to show people I can lift heavy weights. What I'm trying to do is learn a technique, learn it correctly, so that when I get to the heavy weights, I can do it, and I can do it correctly without injuring myself. So I will, and Kim have like noticed that I'll be like, let me go to the basics. Let me be well in the basics so that I can actually get confident in actually doing something much more challenging. And I think if individuals just focus on what are some basics that I can do. I'm not a good water drinker. I'm going to be honest. I mean, that is always going to be my New Year's resolution, is to drink more water. And so when I'm really good at it, it's because I'm sticking to what is basic to me.
What's the other thing that you drink other than water?
Coffee.
Oh, yes! Yes! It's
That's
not bad
it.
then. It's fine.
Not,
it's
no,
made of water. It's perfect.
No, not when you have 5 cups of coffee. It's not
right
good. So, I'm not a big soda drinker. I used to be, but it took me years not to. Now I do drink soda, and I drink it during the holidays. And if I do drink soda, it's usually ginger ale, right? So that's the extent of my soda drinking. It's ginger ale. But it took me years to become a non-soda drinker. And so I went from adding juice to my water to adding water enhancers to sometimes drinking sparkling water to adding lemon to my juice. To my water. So I do all types. I switch it up. Sometimes I drink a specific type of water, so because it tastes better than another brand, which that's all subliminal, really.
But I think I just had this conversation on the last podcast. Like, whether it's placebo or not, if it works, it works, right?
Yeah.
So you're whatever it is. I mean, you may know it's placebo, but
it's get me
you
to
still
do.
believe in it.
Yeah.
And your mind is such a powerful thing that it gets, you're different. You can see the bottle of water if it's a bottle, and it tastes a little different, but in your mind it makes it already easier to drink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know for me, and because I teach in the beginning of the semester, I would drink mainly water. But there's going to be a sweet spot when I'm like starting to get stressed and my water intake goes down and then my coffee intake goes up.
Caffeine. That's a crazy drug.
So that's my addictive drug is caffeine, and then chocolate, and then chips. So, it goes. So if I start drinking more coffee, then I want more chocolate in my life, and then I want more chips in my life. So I know those like indicators of when I'm going down this downward spiral. Sometimes I just go with it because I don't have the mental energy to fight, knowing that at some point I am going to stop and then go back up on my trajectory. And sometimes I do have the mental energy to stop it, and then I do stop it and I turn the other way. I think for me, and this I think really is in this weight loss industry, everything's in the cycle, right? I can be on a good cycle, or I can be on where I'm going up in my trajectory, eating healthy, exercising, all the good stuff that I need to do. And I can be on a downward cycle where not working out the way I need to, not eating the way I need to, not drinking water the way I need to. But when I'm going through those downward cycle, I know that if I have a loss in my family, if my friend died unexpectedly, if a friend who I care about is going through some hard times, so those downward trends isn't because I just don't want to be healthy. It's because I'm dealing with something else that's taking a higher precedence than eating, exercise, and drinking water. And I'm okay with that, right? Because I think that's just life.
You recognize it, though.
I think that's the key. You have to recognize it, and some people don't.
And not everybody teaches it like you, so you have like a little bit of an advantage to be able to see the cause and effect of everything. Like researching the stress thing, and what you said really, I mean, that's exactly what I struggle with, is trying to figure out why these, like, because the family members aren't supportive, or why when they get these diagnoses, why don't they change? Like, because, and I can't, because I'm not in their shoes, understand that mindset. But you really helped out with like clarifying, just like seeing your friend walking with a soda. You figured out every time they were stressed, they drink a soda. So when you saw them drinking a soda, you asked, what are you stressed about? Yeah. So now you're getting to step one of the problem and kind of making it easier to deal with instead of less, like, I don't know if ashamed's not the right word. For some reason it's leaving me, but it's like embarrassed or whatever. They're embarrassed to just talk about maybe what they're stressed, or maybe they don't realize like they're stressed. I don't show it. I carry it and don't really, I'm like, I don't really feel stressed. Yeah. Like, it's no big deal. But you deal with it for long enough, your mechanisms in your body like take over and you just go. Yeah. And then you realize, like, it hits a breaking point somewhere. Like, oh, but you being able to recognize that, like, I know I'm on a downward spiral. I know it, and I'm going to pull myself back out of it. Like, you recognize it. A lot of people don't know how to turn that ship around, I don't think. Yeah. They like just staying in that comfort area. Yeah. And I think that's important for people to do a lot of reflection. So I am a big Jada Pinkett Smith type of a girl. I mean, I talk about the red table talk all the time. and the one reason why I really love that podcast, or that Yahoo TV cast, or Yahoo or Facebook, whatever, it's because she kind of recognized that people need to have space which they feel safe to talk about things that are really hard to talk about. And I think in our society, we are so focused on how we need to get to the next level, whatever that level is, that we don't give ourselves the space to say, I need help to get to the next level. Or I'm afraid what will become of me when I get to the next level, right? We don't talk about those things. We just focus on what is the outcome.
but not the emotions associated with some of these outcomes. If you do lose weight, what does that mean for you and your family or your friends, right? Because you're not going to eat the same things that they eat. And so if you do go out with them, go clubbing, you're not going to drink 5 tequila shots. You may do 1, but you're not going to do 5. So how does that shift that relationship, right? You're not going to actually have the whole pizza. You may have a slice of pizza with some salad. How does that shift that relationship? And I don't think people understand that there's a shift when we make these changes. Sometimes it may be for the better, but sometimes you may need to not be around them as much. And if you do that, how does that shift that relationship? Because now instead of hanging out every weekend, you're just probably hanging out once a month because you are using your other weekends to do stuff that's much more healthier for you. And that's a shift in the relationship. So I think people are sometimes maybe afraid of how their behavior may actually shift that relationship. And it is going to shift. It's just, if you change, something's going to, your relationship with the person is going to change in some form or fashion. Either they will jump on board and change with you, or they will be like, no, I'm not ready to make that change. But I don't feel comfortable being around you while you're making these healthier change. And so we may not have to hang out as much as we used to. And so I think those are some underlying things that happen when you think about behavior change. You can't be a smoker and hang around people who smoke. No. Because 2 things are going to happen. You're going to start smoking again, or you're going to have to start being preachy. And then that will make the relationship horrible. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. For everybody involved, it's just not good. And that's what I've said that too, because, you know, people recovering from things. I know, a guy that spent some time in the prison system or whatever, and I watch him, and from outside, people will look at him and go, like, why does he do this? And why does he act this way? But the guy's wholeheartedly staying away from the things that take him back into it. Mm-hmm. And then I've seen another person go from the same exact background, doesn't leave that area, and ends up going back. Mm-hmm. And you go, like, you see what happened. This guy stayed out. I mean, a meth addict can't be around somebody making meth. No, they can't. You can't do that. Just like the cigarettes, it doesn't matter what it is. If you're an alcoholic, you can't be
around people who drink
all the time. Yeah, you can't have that. Can't be your close, vulnerable friends.
No. And I think it's the same way with food, right? If you are trying to eat healthy, you cannot hang out with your friends who go out to eat for every meal. You just can't do it. Because what you're going to do, bring your lunch with you after they sit down and have their French fries. You're going to pull out your salad. You can do that every now and again, and I'm not saying you can't, but you can't do it all the time. And so something's going to have to shift. Either you're going to have to not buy, let that bag of lettuce go spoiled, or not buy it because it's a waste of money to do it, and join them with the French fries, or you're going to have to say, you know what? I will have lunch with you on payday. First Friday of the week, we will have lunch. I will have fries. But the other 15, 19 days, working days, I'm going to sit at my desk. I'm going to go outside, and I'm going to have my salad. That's fine. Right? But you have to be willing to make those count those costs.
Yeah, and then understand that, like, those people are not going to always be with you.
No.
But that's part of changing the behavior, though. Yeah. Like, and if... I think it was probably my dad when I was younger. I mean, I'm really thankful for the way I was raised, because there's a lot of life lessons between my grandpa and my dad. And, mm-hmm. Like the people I spent my time around as a kid that I, like, respected, that, they said lessons like, sometimes you don't end things. You just... like, you go different ways in life. And that friendship was there for a certain time period, and then it's gone. Mm-hmm. Like, that's just life. Like, you grow, you move on, you go to different things. Just like you have friends when you're single, and then you get married, it changes things, because now you have that person, and your focus is with them, and you have to consider their thoughts and their feelings and where they want to go, and you love them, so you want to go do that. Mm-hmm. Like that's part of who you are now. And the relationship with healthy stuff, you're eating fried foods, you're eating this stuff, you're not working out, you start working out. Well, now your friends are going to be where you're hanging out. Mm-hmm. And then the other friends that don't want to come join, you spend less time with them, and eventually, if either they go the same place or you just naturally, without saying I'm cutting this off, you just naturally go different ways. Like, man, I haven't hung out with that guy in a long time. Yeah. I wonder why that is. Yeah.
And it's funny because there's a researcher. His last name is Fowler, and they was looking at social networks, and they was looking at relationships, connecting. And which was about maybe 10 years ago, they did like a talk about is obesity contagious? And what they was trying to say, catchy phrase as it is, but what they really was trying to say is that...
we could have seen you say that though.
Like-minded people hang out. If there's someone you esteem, which tends not to be really your spouse, but it's like someone who you consider to be your best friend and they consider you to be your bestie, you're going to do the same behavior, right? But that also, there's a flip side to that, is that if you're extremely healthy and your bestie is healthy, you're going to do the same behavior. So it really is your social relationship that kind of dictates, to some extent, some of your behavior. So that's why you see drug users, who are they hanging out with? Other drug users. Or smokers, who are they hanging out with? Other smokers. You won't see someone really, a true smoker, really best friend is a non-smoker, because what's going to happen? Okay, I can't be, if you my best friend, I'm going to tell you, okay, you go smoke and come back to me, because I can't be hanging out talking to you while you're smoking this cigarette. So that's why it really is about the people you hang out with that really kind of impacts your behavior, because you are going to be like-minded in the things that you do. And when you are not like-minded, that's when you bring in the tension and the frustration.
And the stress.
And the stress.
And then the stress, you drink a soda.
And then the stress, you drink a soda. Or in my case, I have a bag of chips.
And coffee.
And chocolate. And chocolate. So
that's so how do you implement you yourself? How do you recognize the stress? That's the first thing. And then what are your little steps that you do to decompress that knows you're going to get to the proper area? Like, what a healthy decompression is versus the opposite.
Yeah.
And so like you struggle with it. Everybody struggles with a stress somewhere like that. Recognize it is one thing, but then the action to take to push yourself towards that healthy direction.
Yeah. So for me, when I start to go off rail, that's my indicator of something's going on with me. Now, I may not know exactly what that something is. That's when I have to do a lot of reflection to figure out, okay, so why are you not sticking to your program? Because I don't even call it a diet anymore. I just call it a program. I relatively eat similar things throughout the week. So I have to figure out what has caused me to go off my program. It could be work related. It could be family related. So I have to go through this list. And so that's the reflective piece that I have to do sometimes. Sometimes I don't want to. Sometimes I was like, you know what? I just don't have the energy, which means that it can be multiple things happening at the same time, right? It can be stress is stressing me out. Work is stressing me out. There's stuff going on with my family. There's stuff going on with my friends. I just don't have the mental energy to try to figure out which one of those have the greatest impact. I just know it's something. And so I have to figure out how to decompress from that something. I have several things that I do. I try to run because that's, to me, is my I'm not a fast runner, but that kind of helps me to think through stuff. I have pets. I really do believe pets are good de-stressors. I call my dog, which really that's not their real name, but I call them Prozac and Celexa sometimes. But trust me, my dog name is not Prozac or Celexa.
That's so funny.
But I call them that because one, I have a poodle, and I really believe he knows when I'm stressed, and so he forces me to hold him, but he stress me. And then I have a mutt, a terrier mix, who forces me to play with him, which de-stress me. So those are the two things. I write, I journal a lot. I walk. I believe that walking also is I believe moving your body is a way of you trying to figure out what's bubbling up. I would say I do yoga, but I'm not really consistent at doing yoga. I would say I try to meditate, but I'm not really consistent at meditating. I do try.
The meditating part is funny because I got into it for a while. I was trying to actually figure out how, like, proper ways to meditate. I'm athletics, and the thing I've done, there's always a way, there's a plan or a way to do things. You need to learn, and trying to figure out, like, the guided meditations or different ways. But then you sort of figure out the more you look at it that meditation can be in a form of petting your dog.
Yeah.
Because your sole focus, or like you said, the walking.
Yeah.
The walking part and being by yourself, walking, you just go out for a walk. You're forced to think in your own thoughts, and I think that's like the main point of the meditation. So it's different for all people and how they get to that point.
Yeah, for me, I think I am not a sit down and meditate type of a person. I think I do prescribe to the walking meditation. And if I think about it, looking back at my childhood, I used to walk like hours, and I didn't realize I was actually meditating while I was walking as a kid.
Yeah.
Because I was in my head. And that's why I like to run, because when I run, I can actually get in my head. And so this is a true story. I went running with a friend of mine who was much faster than I was. So I told her, go ahead, I will meet you at the hotel. And I was so much in my head that I missed my turn to go to the hotel. When I became aware of where I was 2 miles away from my hotel. And I realized that running for me was a form of meditation, because it actually, if you can just run and not actually realize where you are or where you're going until you just like, no, I wasn't here before. I realized at that time I was actually meditating. And it took me like 30 minutes to get back to the hotel. So much so that my friend was about to call out a search party for me because I was so like delayed. And I told her, look, I just ran past the stop, and because I was just thinking. She's like, I would never run with you ever again. But I think meditation does come in different forms, and you just have to figure out what form works for you. So I am a running, walking type of a meditator. My body have to be moving for me to like actually get my brain to be still.
Yeah, and to get into your own thoughts, because it's something that's easy to do. Like, you're just walking. I can walk. I can walk, and then you just you kind of forget that you're walking. You're just going. Like you said, you forget. Like, before you know it, you're at this location. You're like, what?
Yeah,
I'm not even tired. Why am I here?
Yeah.
So I just did that. Now I got to go back.
Yeah, that was the hard part, trying to figure out how to go back. I stopped a lot of people and say, how do you get to this hotel? And there's like, you are far away from this hotel. Like, oh, well.
But I mean, so you teach the students how to help other people recognize this, or do you, what are you actually teaching them when it comes to this sort of thing?
I teach them not to make preconceived assumptions. We all have our own bias, right? So, and most of the students I teach are going to the health field. And my soapbox, which I tell them up front, is that my goal is to help you understand that when you treat people, whether you're OT, PT, nurse, doctor, health educator, don't bring in your preconceived biases. Don't look at the person and say, oh, you don't want to make this change. Get off your soapbox and try to figure out that there may be other issues that is taking precedent, much more precedent than trying to eat healthy. People coming to the health field, coming to the hospital, coming to OTPT, and you think, oh, they're not paying attention to me. It could be because you suck as a human being. Right? And if you suck as a human being, trust you and me, I'm not going to pay attention to what you're telling me. So you have to don't sit so high on your horse and look down at people and talk down to people. People needs to know that you care about them first and foremost. And if that means that you are actually looking at them and talking to them, that's important. And you need to know that when people come into this narrow space called healthcare, you don't know where they're going back to. So you can't tell someone you need to eat more fruits and vegetables if there's no grocery store in their neighborhood and the next grocery store is 45 minutes away. So now let's think about this. You are going to go to maybe a Kroger, maybe a Walmart. You're only going to go to a Kroger and Walmart once a month. What are you going to buy in that grocery store? Are you going to buy lettuce? No, you're really not going to buy a lot of lettuce. You may buy one bag, but you're not going to buy 4 bags because it's not going to last. For 4 weeks. So you have to really understand. Don't tell someone, go for a walk. Okay, there's no sidewalk, so where do you want me to walk? In the middle of the road? Or I live in a neighborhood that dogs roam free, which there are towns around here that there are free-range dogs,
I've been chased by many dog riding a bicycle. I know full well.
Yeah, so even in College Station, Bryan, on my way here, there was a dog who probably got loose from there.
Yeah.
And is, running the streets. So we cannot assume, right, that people are not trying to make a conceited effort by looking at them. And you don't know what they're going back to. Are they taking care of an elderly person? Are they taking care of someone who's sick? Are they putting a lot of emotional energy in a child that have autism? Are they taking care of a parent or a loved one that have Alzheimer's? That's a lot of emotional energy someone is dispelling every day, 24/7, that they may not have that energy to take care of them. So when I teach my class, I teach it in a way to get students to realize that it's not just about giving them information, which that is important, but also to realize that no one lives in a vacuum. And people may not be at their point in their life that they can take the education, but don't look down on them if they don't, because you just don't know what's going on in their lives.
It's like an overall life lesson. That's an overall life philosophy that you need to take with everything you do.
Yes.
Like whether you're a doctor, whether you're a construction worker, a carpenter, whatever it is. Like not assuming or talking down to people or judging. Now the thing I would ask you, I really love what you said. I didn't want to jump ahead of what my next thought was, but that's the way I do things. Sometimes I think it and I didn't say it yet, and so I'm like, what the hell? You skipped a step. But so let's go back here to what I was talking about. So you're teaching this philosophy, and not to get on your soapbox, what is the reverse of that, where people think they place other people on a pedestal? So I would say you see, if you're in the CrossFit world, it's going to be the Matt Frasers and the Rich Fronings. Or even at your local gym, you've got the people that are you see them, they're super fit, They've got all the muscles, all the right places. They crush every workout. Guys at the global gyms, you know, they're gigantic. You know, it takes them a long process, but what the person just beginning looks at is that person is not, I'm not even in that realm, so I can't be around that person. Mm-hmm. You know, like they hold them up to a higher level than they are.
Yeah.
Like they're just regular human beings.
Yeah, yeah.
That did something, like they worked real hard, they had discipline, and they made something out of it. But they're just regular. They feel the same exact things you feel when you're working out.
Yeah.
Or doing whatever it is.
Yeah. I think...
So like a doctor, like, you know, like you as a health professional or like a doctor, he walks in, automatically that person is thinking they're talking down to them. They're expecting that because it's...
the hierarchy, right? So yeah. I think... It's a two-way street. So one of the ways that you can get rid of that hierarchy is that if you are someone that people hold in high esteem, you need to be the role model in a way that says, let me just shorten this distance between us, right? So me as the health profession needs to be able to go to my client, my patients, my participant, and lower that expectation. Like bring myself closer to them. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And I may not, in all honesty, there are going to be some differences, right? If I'm CrossFit, and I don't even know who the healthiest or famous.
That's awesome. I love that.
I'm not that deep into CrossFit, so I don't know who's the best of the best. But that person will always be the best of the best, right? When it comes to competition. But I'm not trying to compete against that person to make change. I'm just trying to compete against myself to make change. And so that's why I feel like I see everyone as a person, because you will definitely get done with this faster, and I'm okay with that. So I'm okay with you being done 15 minutes before me, and I would take my whole 30 minutes. If I say what's the range and it's 15 to 30, trust me, I'm going more towards the 30 than the 15. But I don't. For me, I don't see that. I would go to you to say, how can I be better, or how can I do this exercise in a much more efficient way? Because I know that some of that extra 15 minutes because I'm inefficient. You as the expert, right, need to be willing to have that conversation with me to say, this is how I can help, and I wasn't like this all the time. I came from this spot to this spot, and these are the steps it took for me to get to this level. I think if people have those honest conversation, then that can shorten that pedestal a little bit. There will always be a pedestal. I don't think there would be. You
can't not have it, because I mean it's competition. It's natural. Yeah. It's just so like everything in nature.
Yeah, there will be no equals, right? I would never get to that level. I'm not trying to. But we can definitely decrease the distance between the pedestal by this conversation going both ways. And me knowing that, wow, you used to be 300 pounds. That just took you off that pedestal right quick in a hurry, right? And it took you 3 years to get to this level of expertise. Wow, okay. It may take me 10, but that's okay. That means I may be able to get there if I do these things, right? And so I think those types of conversation can shorten that pedestal and expertise. What I try to do, because I do what I call community-based research, and so my work, the work that gives me passion, is that I actually go into the community and engage the community within my research. And so I know I'm not a native of Texas, so I'm a transplant. And so as soon as I open my mouth, people will be like, yeah, you're not a Texan. I'm like, yeah, you're right. But But at the same time, I also consider them to be experts, right? Because this is the place you lived your whole life. You've been here 15, 20, 30 years. You have multiple generations. You know what's going on in the town. To me, you are the expert, and that's why I'm going to you. Not because I have the answers, all of the answers. You have answers too, and I need to get that from you to be able to create better programs, a better research. And so, to me, you are the expert for this area because I am clueless. I don't even know how to get to the closest grocery store if you don't tell me how to get there. Right. And so I think what I try to do is always lower my pedestal. I do have expertise, and it is what it is. But so does the everyday person who live in rural Calvert. They have expertise that I have no. You know the history of this town that it's not in the books. And so you can tell me exactly where I need to go to get X or Y or Z. Exactly who I need to talk to, exactly why they don't have a grocery store. So the people who I talk to in my research, to me, they are the experts for their town, and I go to them for their expertise.
And I think that works across the board with everything again.
Yeah.
And you saying it's a two-way street is really true. One, it's on the part of the person that but people who've worked hard to get to some places, they don't see themselves in the same light a lot of times either. They see themselves just as a regular human. I won this, yeah, but I'm working just as hard. I've put a lot of time into it, and I'm still not as good as I can be or as good as I should be. They're humble in that sense. Most of them are. Most that I've been around, there are the outliers, but don't pay any attention to that.
Yeah.
But so it's difficult sometimes because you don't always realize somebody's putting you on that pedestal in the first place.
Yeah.
Because all you're looking at is inside you and what you can do better because you're competing with yourself. And then the other person has got you on that pedestal, maybe a little shy to ask you anything, approach, but to break that barrier of hey, I'm just going to go up and ask him a question, and then this person answers in a way that makes him feel comfortable, and then it opens the door for improvement and for that person to get healthier. Maybe not ever beat this person, but they get healthier, they get better, they improve, they get what they want out of it. And everybody's improved from sharing the knowledge of this abundance thing. Everybody gets better. Everybody gets better from it. But it's just breaking that barrier, and it takes both people's mindset
to be able to do it.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's important. And it's hard, right? Because when you are focused on trying to improve yourself, sometimes you can forget where you come from, how far you have come, because you still focus on trying to get better. And when someone's oh, you this good, it's no, I'm not that good. But you have to say, yeah, I am that good sometimes.
That aging part's where the mental thing gets in, or if you stop doing something. So I rollerbladed forever. It was my passion in life. It's what I did. And I eat, sleep, breathe. Girls didn't matter. Nothing mattered to me. It was just that. Extreme sports are the only thing that mattered to me, and that's it. I thought about it all the time. Everything else just got in the way of it. Anything else in life. And then I stopped for 18 years. I don't do it. Nothing, don't have any of it. And then one day just pick it up again. I'm not going to be at the level that I was 18 years ago. Mm-hmm. I can still do, muscle memory, I can still do a lot of things, but I have to be in the mindset to accept that. And sometimes that's frustrating because hard. I'm I really want to do this because it's a lot of fun. Yeah. And I can't understand why I'm not doing it. It's well, because you're not in practice, homie.
And you're 18 years older.
Yeah.
That's the other part.
Yeah, and when you get older, you can't do a lot of the same things. You have to change it. You can have the same amount of fun as long as you just change it. But that's a difficult part of reality that I got older. 18 years removed and haven't done it, and I need to do I need to start just enjoy this step or don't do this at all. Like, there's no point in doing it if I'm not going to enjoy it. So I can either give it up or I can just, go with it and have fun and be around the thing that I love all the time. It's like either way, but that I love how all the things you teach tie together.
Yeah. So there's a woman who's 102 years old. Her name is Ida. I think it's Kinley. I can't remember the last name. But she's like what they call the fastest sprinter. And I'm putting quotation fastest because her sprint time is like a minute and change, right? For the 100 meters, which is slow, right? By Usain Bolt, standards. But she's the fastest, oldest sprint runner
for her age.
100, but she's 102. She still runs at 102. Now, her run may be more like a walk for others, but she's 102. And so I'm like, that blows my mind that someone who, number one, is that healthy, that they still run, even though it's not a fast run, but it's a run. And she is the fastest in her age division. And I think when you consider this whole aging process, it's not necessarily being the fastest, like when being as fast as you were when you were in your 20s, right? Or in your teens, but it's this notion of still moving and going. And part of my aging class, I show pictures of a marathon runner who was 101. Or there was another marathon runner who was like 100 years old, and he died when he was 102, but he ran the marathon when he was 101. So these are like, in society we can say, oh, that's so cute. I don't think they like that. And I personally wouldn't like that either. But I think it's important to realize that if you do what you want to do, it doesn't matter how fast you are. It's just the fact that you're doing it. And to be grateful that you can actually still do it when you're old. My goal in life is that if I continue to run half marathons, at some point I am going to get a prize because I will be the oldest person doing it at that time. I may not be the fastest, but at some point I am going to get a medal because I'm going to get it within
your age group.
My age group. People are going to eventually die out or stop running at some point in their lives. So my goal is just to continue to run so that I can get a medal for my age group. I don't care how long it's going to take me.
That's awesome. Well, this has been a blast, Shevon.
Thank you.
Absolute
It's been a blast
too. I feel like we just touched the surface. This is amazing.
No, this is awesome.
Yeah, so thank you for being on.
Thank you for inviting me.